Hello there, and welcome to episode 13 of Live from Vaders Castle. I'm your host, Dan McQuarrie, and as always, I'm joined with my co-host, John Lee. Hello, John.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Yourself? You good?
Yeah, not too bad. Glad it's Friday. I'm ready for the weekend.
It's true. Yeah, we do like the Fridays. It's been a bit of a strange week though, because I've only been working like today and yesterday because I was on holiday like until yesterday, so it doesn't quite feel like Friday. But it's just because I'm lucky.
Yeah, you are lucky. It definitely feels like Friday to me.
It's been one of those busy weeks for you, has it?
Yeah, it's been busy, but Friday I was blessed with another episode of The Bad Batch, so it's all good.
Well, we've technically been blessed with two, because on last week's episode we didn't do our review of episode 9 because we pre-recorded last week and had a whole episode talking about Darth Vader and his greatest moments, his greatest hits. So if you haven't listened to that one, check it out. It's pretty good. So yeah, this week we've got both last week's episode of The Bad Batch, episode 9, and this week's episode of The Bad Batch, episode 10, to talk about. So it's a full hour of Bad Batch discussion on today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, last week's episode was very, very fun to talk about. So, but I'm also excited to talk about 2 episodes of The Bad Batch, not just one. I feel like these 2 episodes have been very good. There's a lot to sink our teeth into, so hopefully we can fill our time with some great discussions.
Yeah, definitely. 2 very good but very different episodes, I think. So there's definitely going to be some different things to talk about between the 2, but we will go in chronological order. So we will first talk about last week's episode, which is called Bounty Lost. It was episode 9. And straight off the bat, I really, really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a good action-packed bounty hunting extravaganza, and I really enjoyed it. What did you think yourself, John?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well, actually. As you said, action-packed, but the action we saw wasn't exactly Bad Batch heavy like the actual Clone Force 99. Like the action that we got was with some different characters. A new one to the Star Wars universe with Fennec Shand, and an old classic with Cad Bane. So that was really exciting to see. Action heavy, but with different characters for a change this season.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely the first episode this season where like the Bad Batch themselves took a little bit of a sideline. You know, they got subbed off last week. You know, they were in it briefly, but really it was a Megas episode, and it was Cad Bane and Fennec Shand's episode. So it was a really nice one to see. I liked the focus on Omega. I thought it was cool to see. She can look after herself, to be fair now, and getting to see 2 bounty hunters going at it, well, it was a right treat. So I agree with you. It was action heavy, but not Bad Batch action heavy. It was badass bounty hunter heavy.
Yeah, it was really good actually. I mean, I know we've seen Fennec Shand previously in other episodes. I think twice before. I think just once actually, but obviously we've seen her in The Mandalorian. So to get to see an episode, a 30-minute episode that had a lot of her in it, I think that was really good to help establish her into the Star Wars universe. And obviously putting her alongside or up against a seasoned bounty hunter like Cad Bane, I think that was a really brave choice, but I think it paid off really well, and hopefully create some fans will now see her as like one of their favorite bounty hunters, which I'm assuming is what we love to see.
Yeah, no, I think. Yeah, you're right. She has just been in one episode before this, and whilst I like that episode, it is probably on the one of my lowest episodes. I mean, the whole season's been pretty consistent, but this is one of the ones I didn't like so much. Was her first appearance, whereas I think this appearance of Fennec Shand really proved how much of a badass she is. Sort of proves why in Mandalorian, when like Din Djarin sees his targets Fennec Shand, and he's just like, yeah, she's a notorious bounty hunter assassin, like, you should be pretty scared of her. Kind of makes sense to us now because she went 1v1 versus Cad Bane and came out alive. So
So it reminds me of a point I was saying a couple of weeks back I was talking about Kylo Ren and Ray and stuff. Is like you bring up a character, you make a character really badass, and then that also brings up like the other characters around them. So I think my example at the time was like if you make Snoke like really badass, and then Kylo defeats him, it makes Kylo even more badass. So I feel like having Fennec Shand go up against Cad Bane introduces her like at a real good badass point. I've said badass a lot, but basically having her go up against such a cool character and coming out alive just makes her even cooler. Like it doesn't make Cad Bane less cool, which is some things I've seen people saying. Which then is good to where we see her in the shows like The Mandalorians. Like we introduced her and Din's like, oh no, I don't want to go against Fennec Shand. She's a notorious bounty hunter. Yeah,
no, I agree. I think we definitely got some what's the word? We got some justification as to why Fennec Shand is feared. So yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile action scene. But we'll sort of go through what happened in the episodes a little bit. Obviously, we opened up with sort of immediately the aftermath of last week's the week before's action-packed episode, with Crosshair chasing the Bad Batch away from Braca. First little point I wanted to make, Crosshair was actually looking a little bit better off than I thought he would be. I was kind of expecting him to be all Darth faded up at this point, but he was flying that ship looking all right. He's got a couple bandages, a couple burns, but he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's not quite reached Vader and his Bacta tank, which is, as you're saying, it was a bit of a worry about how he's going to come out, but no, he doesn't look too bad. He kind of reminds me of who's that bounty hunter that also has like
Dengar,
yeah, Dengar. It reminds me of Dengar.
I've seen so many people draw on that comparison. To be fair, you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, the man has got some dedication to be that badly burned, broken leg or whatever he had, broken arm, and he just jumped straight in the ship and he's after them straight away. Like he's just no rest for him. He's straight on their tail.
Yeah, and obviously Hunter's all panicking, like, oh, where's the bounty hunter? Where's Omega, etc., etc. And Tech and Echo are just like, look, they've gone, and we're not going to be able to save them if Crosshair blows us up. So we better jump to hyperspace. And Hunter eventually gives in, and that's pretty much all we really get of the Bad Batch in terms of action this episode. We see them a little bit again throughout the episode, but really we sort of head over to Omega, and she's imprisoned in Cad Bane's ship and getting taunted a little bit by little Todo. And she obviously meets Cad Bane. He sort of comes down the ladder and with the Western music playing again, which I love. Every time they do that with Cad Bane, it just gets me really gassed. So it's it was interesting to see that side of Cad Bane in the sense of, he would normally just kill her, wouldn't he? He's not that fussed, but clearly his bounty is very strict on like, we need this pure genetic DNA alive. So could you just not kill her for once, Cad Bane, please? So he's very much like, yeah, you're lucky to be alive. But I can imagine Omega must have been pretty scared in that moment of that being the Donnie that is keeping you in prison.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, she's literally just seen him murk Hunter. Like she doesn't know that he is alive because obviously she got zapped straight after. She's probably sitting there thinking like, oh, he's dead. Like Hunter's dead, and this fella's just come along and killed him in his cool cowboy hat. So she's probably really frightened, and I think overall she does very well to like deal with it and get on with it and like find her way of like. Doesn't have to rely on the Bad Batch this episode to save her, really. Yeah, as you said at the beginning, she kind of gets on with it herself and grows into herself a bit more.
Yeah, she's crafty, isn't she? She is crafty. She finds her way out. She notices that Todo's leg is obviously off and that he's trying to fix it himself. And she sort of uses that as an opportunity to sort of befriend him and offer to help fix his leg and then get out of prison, switch him off and get her sort of comm device back. So it was good to see Omega doing something so crafty herself, and not, it wasn't just the fact that like in other episodes she obviously does stuff to like save the Bad Batch and stuff, but it's normally because she like notices something that Hunter does and copies it. But this time she was very much like having to think for herself, thinking on her feet, and there's definitely good character development for Omega. She's quickly becoming a formidable character.
Yeah, I mean, it's something a bit different. I think fits in well with like the whole Bad Batch's way of doing things, I suppose. It's thinking outside the box is what gets them the results. So yeah, very clever for her to try and convince Toto, what his name? If I'm pronouncing it wrong, but yeah,
Todo, I think it's yeah.
Todo. I feel like I can never get it right because I can't quite nail Cad Bane's accent.
Todo. He's always like Todo.
Yeah, manages to trick him into opening the cell and then giving her full access to all his wirings, which is, even for a robot, that's a silly move to make. He switches her off. She switches him off, and off she runs. Finally, a comlink.
And escapes the ship.
Desperately tries to, meshes the Bad Batch.
What I think's so interesting is that, I mean, I absolutely love Dave Filoni. He's the GOAT. I'm never going to criticize him, but you see so many similarities between obviously Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Bad Batch, of like sort of this young main character who starts off pretty annoying, pretty useless. You just sort of like, why are they here? What's the point? And then they get surrounded by adults who know what they're doing and are very competent, join a bit of a family, and then very soon become not that useless and actually very, very useful. And in the way that Ahsoka and Ezra sort of went on that journey, we can see Omega going on that journey as well. And I don't mean that in a criticism whatsoever, because it's really effective storytelling, particularly because Star Wars is aimed to, inspire and entertain children. It's really good storytelling for that age group, also for us as adults. It's those sort of coming of age stories that sort of we recognize from our childhood, not necessarily the breaking out of a bounty hunter's prison part, but, overcoming life's obstacles as a kid. It's a very common Dave Filoni themes. And I just thought it was very present in this episode, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's one of those things, it's like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So if that's, that's Dave's like go-to method of storytelling, I suppose, or the one that he finds works the best with Star Wars, and you go for it.
I mean, to be fair, it isn't even really Dave's. It's George Lucas's original. I mean, that was the Luke Skywalker story, the whiny farm boy becoming the formidable Jedi, to Anakin's little whiny boy racer into a formidable Jedi. It's from the Lucas school of filmmaking into the Filoni school of filmmaking, now into like every Star Wars show which comes out. But it's the core theme of Star Wars. So as you said, if it ain't broke.
Yeah. I think it's just because, as I think I said last week or the week before, like personally, I always feel like a great Star Wars story or great story in any media really is about the emotions. I feel like it just always conveys such strong emotions that the way Star Wars tells its stories in that sort of method we just mentioned, that works for me. And until I get bored of it, which I can't see happening for another 20, 30 years, I can keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think Omega is like slowly, sort of like episode by episode, becoming a character that more and more I can see myself, ranking on the level that I rank, other Ahsoka's and Ezra's and that sort of thing. Obviously, she's nowhere close yet. Even I kind of hope she doesn't. I'm hoping that they're sticking with this idea of her like being special because of her relation to the Fets, which we'll go into in a minute, as opposed to any idea of Force sensitivity. So obviously, she's not going to be like a Jedi character the way I rate like Ezra and Ahsoka, but she's like slowly getting there. I can see myself in like 3 or 4 seasons of the Bad Batch being like, yeah. I rate Omega pretty highly. She's a very endearing character, very smart, capable, works well with the rest of the batch. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, very true. I mean, as you said, it wasn't until like season 3 of Rebels or like, I don't know, like season 5 of Clone Wars, ironically, when Ahsoka leaves, that you really feel like she's like one of those like characters that like sticks in your heart. So yeah, I don't want them to rush it or like try and rush Omega's like development. So I think they're pacing it really well. So it completely works for me at the moment. And if it takes a couple of seasons, it takes a couple of seasons. You can't really complain about good storytelling being over a long period of time.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I think they're pacing it really well, because every episode we sort of see her being sort of more sort of individual, useful, strong, and then we're sort of learning more and more about her as well, which brings me on to the big bombshell that this episode dropped. See, the Bad Batch is still trying to figure out where she is. They figured out that it's Cad Bane that took her, and then Tech drops the bombshell that he's just like, oh yes, I've been studying her DNA a little bit, and turns out she's a complete genetic replication of Jango Fett, the only one available, because Bob has sort of assumed MIA. She is essentially Boba Fett's twin sister. He's Alpha, she's Omega. She is the key to obviously Jango Fett's genetic material, which we know has all but dwindled out now. So that's the reason why the Kaminoans are so desperate for her. That's what makes her so special. Her genetic mutation is she's just basically a female version of Jango Fett. And I absolutely loved this being the thing that made Omega special. I think we had talked about it quite a bit of like, are they going down the Force sensitivity line? And I thought it was an interesting concept, but I was a little bit like, nah, I don't want it. I want a show that's not about Force sensitives. I want it to be about, clones, bounty hunters, ordinary people, that sort of thing. And the fact that they've said that the reason that Omega's so special is because she's basically Boba Fett's sister, I was like, yes, more of this, please. I liked it. I was very, very happy. Were you?
Yeah, me too. Actually, I think it's a great reveal. As you said, I think it's refreshing that it's not just another like Force thing, because I know obviously it's Star Wars, and like the main thing of Star Wars is the Force and the lightsabers and stuff. But there's so much more storytelling that's available with other avenues. So I think having Omega being basically, Boba Fett or Jango Fett, I suppose, but like a female version, one, it's very refreshing, as I just said, and Boba Fett is such a love character, and it really can. Obviously, we haven't had much Boba Fett stuff, so I think adding like some more lore to that kind of family tree, love it. I think you can't go wrong. And it's just nice for female representation, I suppose, is that you get to have Boba Fett can be like for the people that want to have like a guy role model, and then you got Omega for people that want to have a girl role model in the Boba Fett tree.
Exactly. I think you're right in saying that as well. Like the implications that this has for that family tree, obviously. There's a whole lot of story here, which I imagine Filoni is planning out over multiple shows and years. But, one day Boba Fett's going to realize he's got a twin sister, basically. A sister, much like Luke and Leia had to find out. I feel like Boba Fett's going to have to find out one day how long Omega's going to survive for. Is she still going to be alive post Sarlacc pit Mandalorian, this Boba Fett that we meet who's a little less evil than he was pre-Sarlacc pit? Is she gonna be obviously the good guy, and Boba Fett's sort of gonna be the bad guy, and they're gonna scrap each other? Who knows where this can go? But I think the implications of what this means, she's also essentially a Mandalorian as well. This basically confirms as well, because obviously Jango Fett was confirmed to be a Mandalorian in The Mandalorian, so that made Boba Fett by default a Mandalorian as well. That's what he argued. That's why I didn't let him keep the armor. But then I guess, does that also make Omega technically a Mandalorian in a way? She wasn't raised by Jango Fett, to fight in the armor or anything like that. But I guess by, family tree rules, she could, don the Mandalorian armor one day, which I think would be very, very awesome. No idea where any of this is going to go, but it's all very interesting and leaves many questions that I don't need answered right now. I just want to think about them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it gives so much room for like speculation and like where you're going to go with it between like the eras. So like obviously we're finding out at the moment like what's happening between like prequels and the original trilogy, I suppose. And then, like, how far does the story go? Does it span past the original trilogy, as you said? Does it then span into, like, the Mandalorian area? Does it span even further than this? Like, my idea could be is that she gets frozen in carbonite for like 20 years and then just appears in Book of Boba Fett as like a fully grown woman.
Yeah, no, I was having the exact same thought the other day. I was just like, how would she appear in Book of Boba Fett? And I just can imagine Book of Boba Fett being like 8 episodes long, and then like the final like post-credit scene of like Book of Boba Fett is like Omega just rocks up as like a full-on older woman now, just in like some badass armor, and she just like shoots Boba, not dead obviously, she like shoots him in the shoulder or something, and then she's like, yo broski, we need to talk. And then everyone's like, whoa, where's Omega been all this time? And then Filoni's like, you're gonna have to watch season 2 of Bad Batch to find out. And then it just, he goes into that cross show storytelling that I'm sure he absolutely can't wait to do. So yeah, speculation gone wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. It just leaves so much room for, you literally can go anywhere with it, I suppose. I mean, because it is Star Wars, you could literally, yeah. I mean, I saw some people online have been like, because in Sid's room there's like a white Mandalorian helmet.
Yeah.
So people have been like, is it like the white Boba Fett armor that was like, I don't know if you've ever seen that, the pictures of like promotion armors that he used to have. I can't remember what it was for, but basically it's like an all-white Boba Fett armor. I can't remember if it was like concept art or something.
Yeah, it'll be clean.
Like, will that be what she's wearing?
Yeah. Jeez.
Because I mean, she does wear a lot of white.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, possibilities endless. But yeah, I feel like that was the major bombshell that was dropped in that episode. And I think most people who watched it were like, oh, that's pretty crazy. That's a pretty good connection. And I feel like a lot of sort of like diehard Star Wars fans just got their like that meme out, and it was just like paper on the wall with all the arrows. Just like, what does this mean?
Yeah, that's how I feel at the moment.
It's probably, as you said, an accurate representation of Dave Filoni's office as well. It's just him going, how many different shows is Omega now going to pop up in with Boba Fett and with Ahsoka and with Din and with Baby Yoda, and yeah, hype.
Yeah, I mean, surely, I mean, you can't create a new character in a franchise like Star Wars that's set like so far in like the past, I suppose, because that we're a sequel era at the moment is like what's the most present thing. So like set in the past as well. So you got to catch it up with all these other storylines and make it fit in place.
Yeah,
so
and like, I feel like
you have to have a crazy wall.
Yeah, Filoni is not gonna give Boba Fett a twin sister when there's a Boba Fett show coming out and not do it for a particular reason. He's got a plan. The man has got a plan. It's going somewhere. I'm telling you. Boba Fett has come back and now he has a twin sister within the same year. So there's definitely big plans going on at Lucasfilm, which I'm very excited about. Yeah.
I can imagine him sitting there like, and I don't know, like writing for Mandalorian season 2 or 3 or whatever, or like Jon Favreau, and he's just like, hey, John, listen to what I'm going to do. It's like dropping breadcrumbs for him. He's like, you'll never guess what I'm going to do next.
Hey, John, I've got a plan. What about season 1 of Mandalorian? We just have a shot of like a pair of boots finding a bounty hunter dead in a desert. Oh, and by the way, this bounty hunter is going to be in this Bad Batch show. Oh, by the way, those boots are Boba Fett. Oh, by the way, he's alive. Oh, by the way, he has a twin sister. Jon Favreau's just like, Dave, what's going on?
So please, Dave, calm down.
So yeah, that definitely got me excited. That was probably one of the most interesting parts of the episode. But I mean, the reveals didn't stop there. We also found out that it was Lama Su, obviously, who hired Cad Bane. Lama Su wants Omega back, obviously, for her genetic material to duplicate it and then have her killed. Nala Se does not want that. Other reveal, she hired Fennec Shand because she wants Omega alive and safe away from the Prime Minister. So the Kaminoans are at each other as well. So there's layers on layers going on here, which I thought was really interesting because not only is everyone and their mum after Omega, but the Kaminoans are also fighting amongst themselves. There's all sorts of intrigue going on here, and I thought that was a really interesting little connection. Still good. I love that we're getting Camino stuff still throughout the show. I think it's obviously all going to pay off by the end of the season. So yeah, I thought that was a nice little bit of plot that they included as well.
Yeah, it's almost like the little Kaminoan civil war happening amongst the Parliament, or like the top figures, all over Omega. I suppose, as you said, some want them dead, some want her dead, or some. I don't want to say someone are dead. It's obviously just the Prime Minister wants her dead, but everyone else is just kind of following along with it.
Yeah, and Nala Say in particular has that connection, so she doesn't want her dead. And yeah,
it's interesting. I'd love to just I don't know, maybe like a book or something, have like that relationship explored more. Maybe like Omega growing up, because obviously she doesn't age like everyone else. The rest of the clones, should I say, she ages the same age as same way as Boba Fett, like everyone else.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah, that took such a long-winded way of saying naturally, but yeah. So I think a nice book, or maybe a short comic series, explaining that would be really interesting. Yeah. I think. And
I think I'd like a little junior novel, like a book for sort of kids who could read it and be like, oh, a little story about Omega, and then us Star Wars nerds can be like, what happened on Camino on this day back in 22 BBY.
You could even write it like Omega's journal. That'd be such a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
There you go, Lucasfilm.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Disney, give me a call. Disney.
You're listening to this stuff. This is gold over there. Honestly, yeah. The rest of the episode after that was a big action scene, and I don't mean that in a negative at all. It was an awesome action scene. There was obviously quite a lot of plot going on of what is Fennec Shand really up to? What's Cad Bane willing to do? What line is he willing to cross? But ultimately, it was two badass bounty hunters beating the crap out of each other. 1 minute, Cad Bane had the upper hand, then Fennec Shand had the upper hand. Then Cad Bane had a flamethrower. Then Fennec Shand booted him out a window. Then he had a jetpack. It was all going off. It was a very exciting fight. So, as much as it was an awesome fight scene and I absolutely loved it, it's not a huge amount to talk about really, apart from the fact that it was awesome. Do you sort of have anything that you want to bring up about the fight, apart from how good Cad Bane's blasters sound when he shoots them? Because I was just I might get that sound recorded and have as a text notification, because I really like the sound of his blasters.
I was going to say that I really forgot that Cad Bane had his little jetpack rocket boot things. So when she yeeted him off the side, I was like, oh shit, she's killed him. And then he activated his little rocket boots, and I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I forgot he had those.
Those crafted boots.
Yeah, I mean, it was a sick fight. I mean, yeah, as you said, it went either way. One moment Cad Bane had the upper hand, another moment Fennec Shand. There was one move in particular I thought was unreal. I can't exactly remember what it was, but Fennec Shand hit him with a nasty headbutt. I'm pretty sure it was it flowed really well from another move or something, but I can't exactly remember what it was.
Yeah, no,
it was pretty tasty.
Yeah, he headbutts her with the sort of little metal plate that he has on top of his head, and thinks he's knocked her out, and then goes for a mega, and then she sort of charges at him and does an uppercut with the top of her head.
Yeah, that was it.
Headbutts him on the chin. It was sick. Really well choreographed fight scene. Lots of really awesome little moves and stuff.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they used motion capture, because obviously they did it in season 7 of Clone Wars with Maul versus Ahsoka. So I'd be interested to see if that's how they did that. And I think it's quite common these days, because it's a lot easier, I think, to capture things like that than to actually sit there and animate them.
Wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
so I'd be interested to see that behind the scenes thing.
They're continuing to make the show look absolutely incredible. The action and everything, when you compare it to some of those early fight scenes in the Clone Wars back in 2008, they've come a long way. These fight scenes are so fluid and so action packed, and so many pieces moving at once, but still incredible. So yeah, I've got to take my Cad Bane hat off to the animators who are doing such an incredible job.
No, yeah, it was a really good fight as well. As you said, it was excellently choreographed. And as I said at the beginning, like it puts Fennec Shand on like a good pedestal to, she's earned like the title she's given in like Mandalorian when like Din Djarin's like intimidated by her. I feel like she's adding notches to her hat, I think is the phrase.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's great. And I think the only other bit that I'd talk about is when the slimy failed Kamino clone fell on Fennec. That bit was quite funny. It was a crafty little move from her. She breaks the sort of scare. I mean, they were giving me real Exegol vibes, of all the failed Palp clones. But those tanks dropping on Fennec. Obviously, the sort of the message of this scene was just like, this is past Kaminoan cloning experiments, because this was an ex-Kaminoan facility. It was like the floating version of, if it was Avatar, this is the air version of Kamino, as opposed to Kamino being like the water version. I wonder if there's one on Mustafar as well. So obviously Omega sees all of these like failed clones, and she's like, oh no, they're going to make me into one of these failed clones, which is obviously a bit horrific for her to see. But I liked the little suggestions that were being made there. I don't think they were trying to link it back to Snoke or anything. I feel like anytime we see a body in a tub, we go, "Ooh, Snoke." I don't think they were. I think they're just trying to say, yeah, this is the Kaminoans weren't always so successful with cloning. Is probably the point they were trying to make here. But it made for a little spooky and funny bit of action.
Yeah, I didn't realize this either. As I found out literally today, and I was watching some YouTube videos, that the Kaminoans experimented on their own DNA like that to adapt to Kamino. Apparently, Kamino used to be like a land planet, then went through an ice age, all the ice melted, and now it's covered in water. And then they adapted their own DNA through like their own cloning process to better survive the conditions on Kamino. So that like failed Kamino clone is probably like an experiment they did for that sort of reasons.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I think Kamino is so fascinating. The Kaminoans are so interesting. The more time we spend there, the better, really. I love getting all these little threads, and I liked seeing this other, cloning facility. It gave a little bit of backstory, and a little bit of, questions that could be answered, could not be answered, but it still led for some interesting visuals and storytelling.
Yeah, I think. I mean, as you said, like, yeah, anytime we see a clone or like a body in a tube, we're just like, oh my god, is this how Snoke started? And it's just like, no, it's just an interesting fact or an interesting little tidbit about what the Kaminoan's been up to for like the last however many years.
In Marvel shows, it's like it's the Mephisting, isn't it? It's just like every time something happens, it's like, oh, is this Mephisto? And that's sort of the meme now. And it's like in Star Wars, it's just Snoking now. It's just every time we see a body in a tube, it's like, oh, it's Snoke. So no.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, obviously Omega manages to escape. She gets to an escape pod, has a little scrap with Todo, and then she manages to escape and then get rescued by the Bad Batch. But the thing I liked about this sort of little ending was she actually didn't need, she managed all of this herself. They just swooped in at the end to pick her up. But, really she was able to handle herself. And, they were on the sideline and then they picked her up at the end. And it was a nice little moment, nice little reunion. Hugs all round. Her and Hunter had a sort of a cute little, daughter-father moment. And she's safe, and they promised that she's never going back to Kamino again, which is definitely a line of dialogue telling the audience she will be going back to Kamino again. That is a promise that's going to get broken.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think this episode really did show that Omega has her own skills and her own ways of getting out of trouble, which she managed to do all by herself, which is impressive for her and builds on her character development. And yeah, all really was needed was the Bad Batch to catch her at the end in their ship, and that was about it, really. So I'm very excited that we get to see her a bit more independent, and and I'm kind of hoping that as the shows go on, they give her more and more independence, and then in future seasons we can finally see her like become her own character.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was a really strong episode, and I really enjoyed it. So let's jump on to this week's episode. Yesterday, if you're listening, tomorrow. We confused ourselves with Friday's episode, the newest one, episode 10, titled Common Ground. Now, this, I'd say, is a slower episode than last week. Still quite action-packed, but takes a foot off the accelerator a little bit. We sort of go back to what our status quo, the Bad Batch, should become, which is them working for Sid. And there's a mission, but this time Omega's sidelined, and it's the Bad Batch get their big action scene, which I thought was nice. Obviously, they were sidelined last week. Omega's sidelined this week, but this week Omega does get quite a bit of character development as well. It was a fun episode. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would when it was getting set up. And then I watched it again just now, and I really, really enjoyed it. So overall, before we go into the details, John, what did you think of this newest episode?
No, I really liked it, actually. I mean, as you said, like, did take his foot off the gas a tiny bit in terms of the action, but it was nice to see the Bad Batch back in like the driver's seat. It was nice to see like the moral choices they had to make, and like how, again, it's like how they view the galaxy after the Clone Wars have ended, and how they view themselves, and just how they're going to move forward with certain things. That I think they did well. They talked about well in the episode. Yeah, and obviously the development with Omega, I think, was really good, and I'm really looking forward to them exploring that a bit more in future episodes, actually.
I think obviously the episode opened up, and I thought it was a really, really interesting opening. It opened up with planet Raxus, which we see in one episode of Clone Wars when Ahsoka goes and meets the Bonteris with Padme. It's Raxus they go to, which is the central government of the Separatists, and they're being occupied by the Empire, which obviously is really interesting just to see that, what was happening to the Separatists, their planets, as well as the Republic planets. Now the Empire's about. Senator, I think is it Adi Singh or Avi Singh, his name, I believe.
Yeah.
Senator, I wrote it down because I didn't want to make a mistake. It is Senator Singh, at least. He is sort of forced into giving in to the Empire and telling his planet that they're going to have to accept it, to which he actually says no, quite honorably. And he's taken into custody. His droid then sends out a message basically saying we need someone to come rescue him. That's the sort of intro. Things I took away from that first scene: animation is absolutely beautiful. That planet looked incredible. B, really interesting to see what the Empire's up to and how their occupation on other planets is going. And C, it was very interesting to find myself rooting for a Separatist, which obviously is the whole point of the episode. But I thought it was a very interesting way to open up the episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit different, obviously. I think, as Hunter says, he didn't think they'd go to that planet. Well, he thought they'd go to that planet at some point, but not the way they did. So obviously, I'm assuming he was meaning that they'd go and they won the Clone Wars to take over the planet and mark their victory. And in the end, they go in there to save a Separatist senator. So probably not the most ideal scenario for a bunch of clones to go on. But yeah, I mean, I think it was really interesting. I think some of the characters that had the most interesting points of view on what they were doing, personally, I think was Echo. Echo was the one who was really against it. He hated the idea, and it was numerous times he said he didn't like it. And I think numerous times off screen he must have said it as well, because he mentioned it on screen to us in the ship, and Rekka's yeah, we know, you've said loads of times. So even though he mentioned it to us quite a lot, he's probably been mentioning it off screen even more, which is obviously understandable considering what the Separatists did to him.
Yeah.
So it's pretty understandable why he's so against it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I was kind of hoping they'd mention. I was kind of hoping he'd mention it to the other Bad Batch or like make a bigger fuss about it. But
yeah, I was
suppose they
literally
already
just
know,
gonna
so-
I was literally just gonna say that I agree. I think this the sort of the core moral theme and question of this episode was very much rooted in Echo. I almost just wish he had a little bit more time, just because I think whenever Echo was sort of going on about this, like, I'm not comfortable with helping the Separatists, it's very obvious, obviously, that, you know, based on Echo's past, what Tambor did to him. And then through to the end of the episode, when it was Echo that sort of says to the Separatists, like, you should live to fight another day. I really like that, and I really like that question. My only criticism is I think we just needed a little bit more of that, because that was the most interesting aspect of like Echo dealing with this idea that maybe not all Separatists are bad, and in a changing galaxy, maybe they're changing as well. And I think that was really interesting. I just wish we had a little bit more of it, because I love Echo. I mean, even the beginning of the episode when like there was that shot of like them eating the Mantel mix, and then like Echo looked at it and he was like really studying the popcorn before, and he didn't even eat it. Just even that little bit was funny. I love every time they do something with Echo, and sometimes in these episodes where he gets a good moral question, they just don't quite follow through with it as much as I'd want them to. But I guess, you know, they've only got 20 minutes to tell a story. It's only a little minor nitpick. But yeah, I agree. I thought it was a very interesting question to pose. And it was definitely interesting, this suggestion that he probably went on about it the whole way through hyperspace on the on the way to this planet.
Yeah, I mean, because the other clones obviously hate Separatists, you know, just like any soldier, I suppose, is not a massive fan of whoever they're fighting against. But Echo's definitely got like an actual personal vendetta, or like, you know, personal reasons. But then, as you said, like it again gives them a good opportunity to be like, okay, well, what Tambor did this to me, and he's a Separatist, but then doesn't have to necessarily mean that like all Separatists are gonna like do this to other people, because it is, you know, like awful what they did to him. So yeah, it's like separating, like, I suppose it's like separating like the political ideals of the Separatists and like the Republic from the people, which I think is a very interesting concept that, you know, is obviously very relevant all the time in all walks of life.
Yeah,
and again, as you said, they only got 20 minutes, so what are you going to do?
Because wasn't it right at the beginning of the episode where they were, did they not say a line like, oh, we're not here to talk about politics, like we're here to do a job, basically? And I think that really links that point of, you know, at the end of the day, when you actually like look at this Senator Singh, he's an honourable bloke. He cares about the people he represents, whether they agree with him politically. I mean, a lot of their beliefs are to do with the war, what side of the war they fought on. But, you know, whether us as viewers agree with the politics of the Separatists versus the politics of the Republic or whatever, it's the fact that you can actually look at him despite his politics and be like, yeah, like, a guy cares about his people. He's an honourable bloke. He probably joined the Separatists because he thought it would be best for his people, whether he was right or wrong, whether he knew he was working for a Sith Lord or whatever, probably didn't. So it's definitely an interesting question to pose, and I didn't really expect them to be posing it in the Bad Batch, so I appreciated it. I thought it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, something I found really interesting as well in that opening scene, actually, I'm going to go back to that because it's reminded me, is the clones, like the normal clones in all the white armor and stuff, they end up like doing the things that we see like the droids doing in the Clone Wars. Like they're the ones that are like going in and like basically just like getting rough with like a crowd of people for literally like no reason. Which is, you know, we see like, I'm pretty sure in the Clone Wars there's been numerous times when like a crowd has like not agreed with whatever like this separatist dictator or like whoever's in charge at that point. They're not happy with it. And then the droids obviously go in and get aggressive with them just because that's what they're orders to do. And it was very disheartening, I suppose, to see like the clones that being reduced to just doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's a complete role reversal, isn't it? It's the clones are now filling that sort of evil, faceless mass army that the droids were, but now for the Empire. And, you know, these like little local like separatist leaders and senators actually no longer the villains that we viewed them as, and they're just sort of people also getting, you know, illegally occupied by the Empire. So yeah, I think it's a good point to make, and I think they're looking practically like stormtroopers at this point. It's interesting how the more and more we see them, the less and less like the clones that we loved they actually look like at this point. So yeah, interestingly enough though, the Bad Batch, because obviously they're the good guys, still won't kill them. They spent the whole episode, using stun blasts instead of actual blaster bolts, which I thought was a very interesting touch. They've almost had a change of heart. I don't know if is it perhaps the experience with Wrecker has maybe made them realize, they can't help what they're doing. It's all programming. We shouldn't be killing our brothers, even if they are trying to kill us. I just thought that was very interesting to see.
Yeah, I noticed that actually. When they started shooting at each other, the Bad Batch had switched to the stun mode, or whatever you want to call it. I think that's a good point. Yeah, probably. I reckon it definitely has something to do with that interaction with Wrecker, and obviously getting their chips out, and probably Rex going into more detail about what the chips actually do. I think that's definitely widened their view on like how trapped the clones actually are inside their own heads. I always view it as like, I think the easiest way for me to like understand it, or like my interpretation of it, is like in Get Out, or Get Out, should I say, pronounce my T's, is when, he's in the sunken place. That's how I always imagine it with the chips and like Order Night and the Order 66 and stuff. It's like they're like down in like the sunken place, and then they're like looking up and like can't do anything about it. That's just how I view it.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting way to look at it. But yeah, it's very much the that's the analogy. It's like you're sitting in the car, but the car's driving itself, and you've got no control. You can only watch, sort of thing. It's that sort of similar sort of analogy of like, these clones are the victims, but at the same time they are being bad. They're just. I mean, there was one part where like there was some stunned clones on the floor, and one of the tanks just walked over them. Like there's no.
I didn't even notice
there's just like no regard, and it used to be like the clones would never sacrifice a brother ever. That was one of the reasons you loved them in the Clone Wars. Like the droids wouldn't care if collateral damage, but the clones cared. And then in this, you just seen like clones just getting trampled on by like clones that are stunned on the floor, just got walked over by a tank. No fuss whatsoever. Tanks getting blown up when there's still like, when the other tank was blowing up the one that there were 3 tanks. So when they went to blow up the second one, there were clones everywhere. They would have got blown up. It was very much like not the clones we're used to seeing. But I guess that's one of the reasons why this show is succeeding so well, because it really is showing that transition of Republic to Empire so well. And I think by using the clones, characters that we hold really dearly, it makes that hit even harder. But this is a point we've talked about a load of times, but I think this episode it was quite prominent again.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to drive it home in this. I'm assuming it's going to come up again in this season, so it is a point they're really driving home about. One, just like Order 66, like the actual like extent of it, and then 2, that transition between like the I don't know, like the moral views of like the Republic versus like the Empire, and like how the Empire is just kind of like, well, you do as we tell you because it's the best thing for you, even though it's probably not, and it's just easier for like control, etc., etc.
Yeah. So sort of plot wise, I think this was actually quite a fairly straightforward episode. They're back on Ord Mantell. They're back at Sid's. Sid's got a new mission for them, which is going to get them a load of money. The mission involves rescuing the senator. Hunter's too scared to take Omega with him, because I think the reason he doesn't want to take Omega isn't because he feels she can't handle herself. It's because I think he's worried that he's going to let her down again. I think it's a guilt thing, which I think is quite an interesting development for Hunter, because he used to leave Omega behind because he was like, she's just a kid. Whereas now it very much felt like, I can't trust myself to protect you because I feel bad about Cad Bane murking me the last time. So just stay here where no one can hurt you. So they head off to Raxus on their super sneaky prison break, which I just thought was awesome. All that action, very cool. And then Omega stays behind with Sid. Sid gets her to clean the bar, which is quite funny. And then she gets involved in this game of like chess. I think it's basically chess, hollow chess, whatever it is. She gets involved. Turns out she's a gamer. She's a good gamer. She's got strategy. And then she ends up like beating my two favorite characters of the show, the Weequay and the Ithorian, who always hangs out in Sid's bar. It's like the two local drunks who like never go home. I thought that was quite an interesting little subplot for Omega, considering that last week she had a really big week. I thought it was nice that she was given something a little bit less heavy, just a bit of like a side plot, but it was also quite a fun one. I liked her relationship with Sid and how Sid was calling her sort of weak and hopeless and then apologizing for that. And it's nice to see Sid having to kind of almost be nice. And then obviously Omega figuring out a way that she can like pay off the Bad Batch's debts by just betting and gambling and being a pro gamer. So I thought that whole sequence, like the sequences throughout the whole episode, I thought was really, really funny and interesting for Omega's character, and interesting that strategy is a strength she has. I'd like to see her and Thrawn play a game of chess and see who wins.
No, yeah, I really enjoyed the little subplot we had, or side plot we had with Omega, about her, sulking at the bar. Sid's got her to do cleaning and like being left behind, to then discovering that she's absolutely unreal at hollow chess, and then decides to make money off it because what else are you going to do in a seedy bar on a gambling game or whatever? But yeah, I think the idea of that she's really good with like strategies and stuff, I think it's very interesting because like where is that going to take us in future episodes? But two, I think it makes perfect sense. I think if you really think about it, because obviously, she's a perfect clone of Django and Boba. Two of the most, intimidating bounty hunters across the galaxy, and you don't get like that just through like brute strength and skill. Like you got to have the tactical mind for it as well. So I think she definitely gets that from Django Fett, and I think it makes complete sense. There's a reason he was the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy, and there's the same for Boba Fett. You got to have the brains and the brawns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought it was really good. And I also thought like the line at the end when like she was just like, well, I wanted to be useful. Because she didn't get brought on the mission, but she was like, yeah, I wanted to be useful. So, just decided to pay off all our debts. I don't know. I liked it. I love how even when Omega gets sidelined, she still finds a way to be like really useful. And obviously she's the protagonist. So that's how the stories are written. But I don't know. It's endearing and it's really nice to see. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
I was going to say it was nice to see her get like, as you said, even when she's sidelined, like she's still useful and like still contributes. I think it's nice that they added that plot in to kind of keep that ticking over.
Yeah. I was just going to say like the final sort of point I had about this episode was the action in this episode was one of my favorite action sequences that we had. There's been a lot of like obviously great action, like obviously last week between the bounty hunters, the week with sort of, Crosshair and the Empire arriving and Braca. But this was like an episode where I really felt like we got to see the Bad Batch in action again, kicking ass, thinking outside the box, doing what they do, Tech being Tech and Wrecker being Wrecker and Hunter. But, I just really loved the whole, not just the escape and using the tanks, but them sneaking into the prison. There was so much like tactics going on with Tech and Hunter being a good leader. It was just an action scene that I absolutely loved. And it gave me that need. It gave me that, fulfilled the craving I had for some more just Bad Batch being Bad Batch. Interesting enough, because Omega wasn't there, but I don't mean that as like a negative on Omega, but it was like because Omega wasn't there, they just got to go back to their roots of like how they used to be, and I just thought it was really interesting to see that action.
No, yeah, it was really good. Like those sequences, like inside the palace or castle, whatever. That was really good. Like using the droid as like a distraction to then roll shot grenades under her legs. and stuff like that. I thought was just it's brilliant. Like it's just as you said, the action sequences are so good. Like we get to see everyone like doing their own, like
doing their thing. Yeah,
like, they're all part of the big jigsaw. That is the Bad Batch, like doing their own unique things.
Yeah, I thought Tech had some great moments, with obviously with the tanks and all that sort of thing, and the moment when the senator threw the vase at the clone's head, and then Tech just like ran in and just punched him and stunned the other guy, and then went back to his tablet and fixed the tank. And then there was a really sick moment where Hunter like runs along the roads, and there's like a group of clones, and he like stuns like 4 of them, slides along the floor, stuns a couple more, and then like jumps up the tank's leg and stuns even more. It was just badass action. It was really good. It was really like an exciting action sequence. I really enjoyed it. And Wrecker even had a moment where he threw a clone out a window again, which he always loves to do. So all in all, I really liked it. And I just think that it was one of those episodes where, it's not quite in like the top 3, top 5, but it's not like the bottom 3, bottom 5. I don't even like to call it that because, all the episodes I think have been pretty good. I feel like it's a really good episode in the sense it's got some great action, some like great Omega moments, but we also, as we were talking about at the beginning, got some like really interesting themes and questions and wider galaxy, state of the galaxy things answered, which I thought just made it really interesting. And I think I just want to sort of touch on that sort of final moment with like the senator, and with him being like, wait, what am I doing? I can't leave my people behind. And then, Echo being like, got to live to fight another day, which is actually a direct quote from Clone Wars, because that's what Hardcase says before he blows up the ship over Umbara, taking himself out. So, full circles.
Oh, what a sad episode that is. Yeah, I think as you said, just touched on earlier, like it's such a interesting thing to come from Echo to a separatist. I think that was really nice. And that's a good quote from the other seasons. I didn't know that actually. Well, I probably did, but I just forgotten because I'd seen it such a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't recognize it myself. It was someone else had posted about it, but I claimed to know it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's full circle. Or like that's at least a nice complete circle for that.
Yeah. So and I think the title Common Ground I thought was nice because they had to find common ground with a separatist. And it was nice. I almost want more of this sort of stuff. I do when they do these side quest episodes. I know you get people who moan about side quest episodes, but when they're a side quest episode which has awesome action, like updates you on the state of the galaxy and has some of those really nice thematic questions on moral choices and the characters battling with them like they were in this episode, it makes it completely worthwhile. So I personally like this episode quite a lot more than I imagine some other people did. I hope we see sort of more like it. And yeah, I'm excited for next week.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think this episode ticked all the boxes for me. Like, it added, as you said, it added things about the state of the galaxy. There's good action, there was nice themes and questions around the episode. So yeah, I think this is a good episode, and I think I think you'd be an idiot to call it like a filler episode or something like that, because there's so much information that it gave you. I think if you're calling it filler, you kind of you're missing all the points.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing that I'd add, it's 2 things that I've noticed. These are not even like serious points. These are just funny things that I've noticed. Firstly, people online have been talking about the music in Sid's bar, and how like there's just constantly just like good tunes going on in the background. And I was listening to it when I was watching it. I was just like, geez, like I could actually probably sit in Sid's bar and just sort of groove out to these tunes. I'm liking this Ord Mantell music. It's pretty hard.
Oh, I hadn't actually noticed, to be honest. I'll have to listen out next time.
Yeah, when you rewatch, as long as you got headphones on, you really notice it quite well. And then the other thing which I noticed online, which is quite funny, is there's people simping over like one of the like characters who's like in the crowd on Raxus. There's like a Pantoran woman in the crowd, and I literally seen like 5 different people on Twitter. You know, when you click on the hashtag, you see like at least 5 different people on Twitter being like simping over, just being like, "Oh, that Pantoran woman is beautiful."
I mean, each to your own.
You
Fair
know,
enough.
spotted her in the crowd, and they just took to Twitter to express it, which I respect. But
Yeah, it's nice that we have to hear about
that. But yeah, I don't really have a huge amount else to say. I think we've had some pretty good discussions about both episodes today.
No, I'm good. I enjoyed talking about it, though, to be fair. It's a good episode. Some good episodes this week.
Yeah, definitely. And next week we will be back, obviously. I think next episode's format will very much depend on what happens in next week's episode of The Bad Batch, because we've got our book club to do next week. So if it ends up being an episode of The Bad Batch where there's a huge amount to talk about, we might do what we've done this week and pass it on to the following week and do a double episode and have a whole hour to talk about the book club. Or if it's an episode we could probably, enough happens, but we could talk about it in like 20 minutes, then we'll talk about the episode and then the book afterwards. We'll make a decision based on what the episode's like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or we'll have an hour and 15 episode if we want to talk about Into the Dark a little bit more. But that'll be coming up next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, to be fair.
I'm deep in my audiobook for my reread, but it's technically a re-listen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm liking the audiobook format, actually. I think it's definitely adds a bit of I don't know, like character to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's my first dive into audiobooks for Star Wars, or audiobooks in general, for about 15 years. So it'll be interesting to talk about it next week. Right, so we'll wrap up. Make sure you give us a follow on the Instagram at Live from Vaders Castle, Twitter at Vaders Castle Pod. Make sure you're following our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. Drop us any messages, questions about these episodes, or in advance of the book club next week. If you've read Into the Dark, if you've been reading Into the Dark and you have any questions, queries, theories, let us know and we will talk about them next week. And that's everything from us this week.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, everyone. Bye.